Beloved, welcome back to the shop. I was going through some things and I came across something that is it's very special to me, and I think it'll be of interest to you. This is my grandfather's, essentially his battle belt. Now he was a World War II veteran, and he was in the Air Corps. He didn't didn't fight in infantry, but this is what he wore for 59 years on all of our elk hunting trips. I didn't know that he had done this, but I remember when I went over to his house, and this would have been in 2004, and this belt was hanging on those antlers right there, those big elk antlers. And I'd never seen that before. And I asked him, "Granddad, why is your hunting belt hanging up there?" And he said, "I've hung up my belt. Last year was my last year. I'm just getting too old to hunt anymore." I'd forgotten that I even had this until we started unpacking. And it's so interesting, and it goes into a philosophy that kind of plays into things I'm doing today that we'll build upon. But I wanted to go over this as well as his pack. And the thing that really surprised me is how minimalistic it did. Now, this is basically the exact copy that I used from the time I was probably about 14 up into my early 20s or so when I quit hunting with him. And I just copied what he had. And what's interesting about this setup right here is you can look at it, it's very, very minimalistic, very, very lightweight. And we were able to go out and hunt in very rugged country, some of the most rugged country in the world, Hell's Canyon, which is deeper than the Grand Canyon, out multiple days, out all day. Sometimes it would be below zero, very rugged terrain. And we always had everything that we needed, and it was very light and very fast. And that philosophy, I think, gets lost today with the amount of technical equipment and how much that we think that we need. And I'm not saying that this is the end-all, be-all. It's just a data point and showing what really works. What worked for a man that was an extraordinary soldier, an extraordinary hunter, a tracker, just one of the best woodsmen, if not the best woodsman I've ever known. And there's a lot to be learned by this. So let's go through the pieces. The war belt is interesting, and again, I wore mine the exact same way, so I can speak to all these things. I've got experience with it. But there are 3 items on the belt. Talk about thrift, right? Look at that. Look at how he's repaired the magazine, or the shell belt right there, as he called it. On the left side, we both carried a hatchet. The hatchet was used, this is before the days of GPS. We all navigated map and compass, but we used to use our hatchet to blaze trail. Meaning you would walk along, you'd make a little notch, a dot, or a dash on a tree so that you could find your way out. Now that's frowned upon today, but that's the way it was done. Not only that, it was used for, we never needed to, but an emergency shelter. But what Granddad typically used it for is he used it to split the pelvis on deer and elk when you were butchering. Just chop right through it. That's the way he did it. And look at the sheath. That's been around a while. He even brazed is that an Indian head penny on there? And the sheath is all been repaired by, is that what, 550 cord? But Granddad was thrifty. He lived through the Depression, and what he wouldn't have considered not using something, he repaired everything. The shell belt would have been worn to the right up front, where you could get at it pretty good. And I remember he taught me there used to be a divider inside. It was divided into 2 compartments, and we would put our cartridges in there. Granddad shot a 7mm Magnum. I shot a 300 Weatherby Magnum, and you could put the better part of a box of shells in there, maybe a little bit more, and that's all that we carried. The shells were carried on the belt so that we could reload quickly. There were several times that we had to, long shots and different things. And on the right-hand side, his original World War II canteen, aluminum canteen, the old one with the aluminum head on it, and this comprised the entire belt. That was absolutely it. That was the only thing that we put on there. One thing that I'm not showing here that we would carry as well is a World War II packboard, which was essentially just a plywood pack, lightweight, that was able to, had a bunch of hooks on it, and you put rope on it, and you're able to carry meat. So we didn't leave opening morning with that, but if we went in to pack elk out, then we would carry that as well, and just sling the small backpack over that packboard. This is the very same pack that I had. This was a military or World War II issue. Just look how small it is. You know, look at the packs that we have today. You know, we have to carry so much more stuff, but this was enough. Even when it was really snowy and cold, I remember we would have the essentials. Most of the stuff is still in here that he carried, but we would add maybe a layer, a wool layer. We'd add sandwiches. My granddad he was so thrifty. When we would cook breakfast in the morning, we'd always have pancakes left over, and he would wad those things up, roll them up, and put them in his pocket and offer them to me all day long. Hey, you want a hot cake? No, Granddad, I don't want a hot cake, but that's what he would do. He said hot cakes are good because they stick to your ribs. Look at the repairs on this pack. 59 years. 59 years we carried these, and how many miles I walked with him with this on his back. So inside, we'll go into it together. We'll see what all is in there. It should be pretty much complete. I remember in the last few years, when we started butchering, Granddad got into using a bone saw. I don't know that this is a bone saw, is it? That's just kind of a universal saw. But rather than getting all the bone fragments when you have to use a hatchet when you're butchering that can get in the meat, he just started doing this using a bone saw just the last few years. What else do we have in here? This is kind of cool. We have a pair of military, looks like Bausch and Lomb. Yep. Sunglasses. Those are his original ones there. I think those are from World War II as well, or I could be wrong, but pretty close to it. They're pretty old. Bushnell, or Bausch and Lomb. Bausch and Lomb. Had those. His hunting knife. Oops, whoop. The original Gerber. Before the armor hide, right there. That's what he butchered with. I'll tell you a story. I was pretty young, teenager, and one thing that Granddad always told me, we always did, was he said, guys make a mistake. If you don't get anything and you're packing up and you're driving out, he goes, more times than not, it's happened to me a couple times, I've run into elk on the way out. You know, the season was still open. There's no reason why you can't hunt on the way out, so he always insisted, keep your rifle in the front seat rather than pack it in the back. Dudes, we had horror stories of dudes that would throw their rifle in the case in the back and then come across a bull elk and not be able to get it because their rifle's all stowed away. So we'd always carry those in the front seat loaded. But I shot a spike elk just that way. We were on our way out, and he stopped, and I ran out and went prone and ended up shooting it. Well, funny story. When we went over to find it, Granddad stepped over it and he pulled this knife out right here and slit its throat. Now, when you have an animal, many times when you shoot them, they're not dead immediately. Some will bleed out, some won't, but that's the merciful thing to do, to put it out of its misery right away. And this was the very knife. I'll never forget it. Him standing over there and grabbing that antler and coming around and just cleanly cutting the elk's throat. Well, I heard something in the bushes behind me, and here came a dude. With a rifle, out of breath, running, and really upset. And his face was all cut up. It looked like he'd been in a fight. What had happened is he'd fallen down a couple times and messed his face all up. Well, he had heard the shooting and came over there, and he started insisting that was his elk, that we had taken his elk. And he was very insistent, and I was a boy. I had my rifle there. I didn't really know what to do, and my granddad was standing over there and all covered in blood, and it turned into a big argument. And he pulled up his rifle on my grandfather. And he said, I'll shoot that SOB so full of holes that there won't be any meat for anyone. And I remember him lifting this knife up and shaking it at that guy. My granddad was not a violent guy, just blood running down his arms, from the butchering. And he said, if you know what's good for you, get out of here. Just like Clint Eastwood, like that. Well, I was intimidated. I didn't know what to do. So I pulled up on him. So we had a Mexican standoff going right there, the three of us. Unfortunately, his friend caught up with him, talked some sense into him, and we searched the animal. And there was only one hole where I'd shot it, right in the front shoulder, and that was the end of it. But just kind of a funny story. But that was his hunting knife right there. That wouldn't fit on the web belt, so he carried it in his pack. He also carried an elk whistle. We used to call elk, sometimes they'd be bugling. Usually it's a little bit late for the rut during elk season rifle in Oregon, but you could get them to answer by blowing on an empty shell casing if you had one. And then in later years, he started carrying the elk whistle, just for fun. He really loved elk hunting and just was really into animals and such. He carried a specific skinning knife. My family's Native American, and a lot of our aunts, great aunts had to do a lot of beadwork, and I have a lot of things like this. And this was a knife that was made for him. This is a skinning knife. This is different than a butcher knife. You usually want to keep your skinning knife really sharp, and this blade design is better. You're less likely to cut through the hide, and it's just everything. So he would carry a dedicated skinning knife as well. Sometimes we would skin right down there in the field and quarter out because we'd have to pack it so far. We've got looks like this is his hoist. This is like a 2-to-1, 4-to-1 pulley set that we would hang meat up. Just some heavy rope in there. If you're in bear country, you have to, and you're going to leave your meat out, you have to put it up in a tree or they'll drag it down. It's also a way to keep it cool. You can keep meat, if you put it in a meat bag, keep the flies off of it. And this was a 4-to-1, so you could hoist those quarters up because they're quite heavy, 100 pounds or so, bone, for a quarter with a bone in it. Got the maps, Chest Nemus unit, there we used to hunt over there. All the old maps, hand maps, all hand drawn with all of our stands in different areas. He knew this place like the back of his hand. He hunted there since 1945, I believe. And then his fire starter kit, just a small leather buck hide. He probably made this here, would have his a candle. Probably a candle and some tinder in there originally. Yeah, just maybe a lighter. Got, oh, look at this. This was his match container. He used to carry this. I wish I had his compass. We had the same thing. He made one of these for me. This is a waterproof military match set, and it screws open, and there are the matches. He's got windproof matches there, broke off. But this keeps them dry, and it used to have a lanyard on, a little loop on the top, and he would tie a piece of paracord to this and the compass, and we would go through our belt loop, and this one would be in the back pocket, and he'd keep his compass in the front pocket because we were always pulling it out, navigating by it, and using it. And I wished I had it. I think my treacherous uncle took it when he went through the house when my grandfather died. But I did end up with this, which I'm really grateful for. So at least that's half of it. And then the last thing in here, there's a cable saw, which I never saw him use that before. I don't remember that. And his hunting license, right there. Probably the last one. Hunting license and tag. What year would this be? What does it say? Oh, this is a bear tag. Yeah, bear tag. $10. What's the date? 89. 89. Yep, an old bear tag. But I thought that was quite interesting, and it was fun to go through that. And why I'm sharing this and why I said, this is something that we can learn from is that I'm going to do a feature-length video in the next day or so, Lord willing, of going through my complete kit, the Minuteman kit, the go-to-war kit. And I've really drawn a lot of inspiration from this of less is more, of really taking a hard look. And rather than thinking about what I can add to it, but what I can take away. What do I really need? What can I live without? Because you just get too much. You get too much stuff. And this right here, I think, is a testimony to what can be accomplished and what we were able to accomplish in a difficult environment and I never felt like I was out and lacking in anything. I never felt like I was underprepared, and that little pack and that little belt with a rifle and a packboard was all a guy needed. And we used it for years and years and years. So hope you enjoyed this. May God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you all on the next video.